80 to 90% of a human's personality and character is fully formed by the age of 8. You start to discover that it's a whole bunch of little kids walking around in adult costumes.
This week on Clear for Takeoff, I have my friend Keith Mercurio coming up. Keith is a leadership coach who helps guys like me develop themselves and understand the things that are holding them back.
I go to the jungles of Costa Rica. I'm seeking the ancient wisdom of the Amazon, hoping, praying, just anything that I will be healed. And I meet my shaman, Chris. And Chris from Pittsburgh. All of our decision-making and everything else is reactivity of the mind. And the mind is far better understood as the nervous system, of which the brain is only a portion. Then we have all it that gets piled and programmed into us. And then we keep getting these results in our life. As far as relationships, success, whatever, the world just acts as a mirror. It shows us what we need to heal. It shows us what we need to work on. It shows us what we need to sit with. You used a great phrase in here, stabbed us in the back. Okay, well, that didn't happen.
Felt like it.
We're emotional human beings. I don't care how illogical you are. You're governed by emotion. You're governed by the nervous system. Most personal development and most coaching and everything else is deep in the thought process, thinking your way through things. And we tend to try to think our way through how we're feeling, think our way through how we're thinking, think our way through problems and everything else. But what I have started to realize, and that is having such a profound effect on me, is
Keith Mercurio, it's so good to have you. It's great seeing you.
you as well. Charlie, I been too long. I'm always, as I mentioned, this is the second time I'll say it, but I'm always struck by how tall and handsome you are.
Coming from a guy that's taller and better looking.
Yeah, this is don't try to return volley on this. This is my observation. And I think it needs to be known. You're even better looking in person than you are on camera.
Oh my gosh.
This is important for the public to know.
Blushing over here.
Good.
I remember the first time I met you.
Yes, I remember
I
this
walked in your office and you were in this beautiful corner office with the windows up at the top level of some building. And
yeah, the U.S. Bank building in St. Paul. Let's not pretend like I was in a Fortune 100 establishment.
It looked amazing. And I walked in and you were wearing this like bespoke blazer with these loafers. And I was like, who is this? And we had a great conversation. I feel like we were like instantly friends.
Yeah,
there was just so much there. And I can't wait to dive in and just like learn about the beginnings of it. You are a leadership developer. You develop leaders.
Oh God, I think that's far too much credit. I'm a leadership coach.
You're a leadership coach.
Yeah. And I think because we can get this right out of the gates. Like I work with already extraordinary leaders, and then what we would say is like then we unlock like a level of magic on top of that, and their ability to influence and their awareness and how they show up. But I mean, everybody I work with is already like insanely successful, wonderfully equipped, humble, seeking, remarkable people. So
when you say magic, what there are certainly people I've met that are like, wow, you're really impressive and incredible. You're kind, you're gracious. But then there are those people. My English I'm still working on it. That you meet and you go, there's something different about this person. And I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
So when you said that extra level of magic, that made that like really hit me.
Yeah.
What is that thing?
Well, I think, what's interesting is you started with a really important word, which is impressive. And I think so many people, and I'll speak just for myself in this regard, have spent most of my life in an effort to be impressive, right? So to gather the skills or the traits or whatever the components are that make others say, wow.
So like a corner office with a beautiful blazer and them loafers you were wearing.
Make no mistake, brother. All the different ways that if I dress myself up, maybe I'll feel like I'm enough. Right. So that's, and so often, at least for me, again, speaking only for myself, that's all ways of sort of masking or trying to dress up the insecurities that are, below the surface when it comes to the sense of worth. But, when you talk about like then where people sort of elevate to another level, because my experience in life thus far has been that is a really damaging, dangerous, and fleeting pursuit. because what it does is it leads to an entire existence of seeking external validation, because you can't be impressive if there's nobody to be impressed. Yeah. So what ends up happening, what happened for me, was that I just spent my whole life trying to accrue and draw, admiration and validation, and that's all the impressive parts. And I'm not saying that they're bad or unwarranted, or that everybody shares in this, but for me, it was so one-sided that it was dependent upon external validation that I completely lost and basically didn't even, discovered I never had the capacity to, in fact, validate myself internally, right? And so there was this massive gap between external appearance and internal worth, self-worth. What I think when you talk about like impressive and then to that magical level, I recently saw a study. It was a scientific study, I think, on Instagram, and it was,
I love a good Instagram scientific study.
We're just going to cite Instagram, but it was but it was talking about this. They were measuring vibrations, and one of the highest vibrations that people experience is love. And to be loved, to experience love, to feel love, one of the highest vibrations. But even higher than that was the experience of authenticity. And so,
higher than love.
yes, yes. And what people are really drawn to, that I would say brings people into a level of magic, is when there's such an honest integrity. The inside and the outside are in such total coherence, such congruence, that it vibrates at a different level, and people are drawn to it in a way that is almost like magic. It feels otherworldly. And I would say in a lot of ways it is, because it's bringing in like a humility and a clarity that really I've only seen people develop it from their belief in something greater than them. Whether it's the collective consciousness, God's consciousness, their faith, their spirituality, the depths of their belief system. But it takes a ton of courage to face so fully one's own insecurities, own fears, own shadows and dark spots, that you really can't do it alone. You have to believe that there's something greater, humanity, God, etc., that's supporting you in that effort. And then when that occurs, that's when I experience people who vibrate at what feels like a magical level, where it doesn't even come from them, it comes through them.
It's interesting you say that. One of the highest performing episodes that we've filmed is with Jay Stroman. And Jay, he's the man behind the curtain for basically any retail you've ever seen. And, like his company makes all the tables in the Apple stores globally. Like his stories are incredible. He is impressive, but I think the reason that it was such a heavily regarded, like just so highly regarded, was he was so authentic during the podcast. He was so honest about his own mistakes and shortcomings.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It does cause this kind of like extra level of connection with people. But how do you get there when you've got these insecurities? Like I think about like, I'm impressive. Look at my this and my Range Rover and all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, you're right. That's just stuff.
I saw the Range Rover. It is very nice. I knew it was yours too. Jesus, did I know it was yours?
But all of that stuff, you're right. That stuff doesn't make you happy.
Oh, well, here's the great gap that occurs. There are a few things that you just hit on that I wanted to touch. So, the great gap starts to occur. So if everything is, a search for external validation, right? What'll end up happening, and I've seen this so many times with the people that I work with, is they start to accrue more and more and more circumstantial evidence of their impressiveness, right? And of course it drives, if there's an insecurity, it'll drive a leader to do more and more and more and build a business. Entrepreneurs are notorious for this, right? Like that, if I just get to this place or this place or this place, and it's the next goal, it's the next goal, it's the next goal. But if that journey is an outward in journey of accruing these data points that are meant to make us feel like enough, right? Once I've done that, then I'll be worthy, then I'll feel good about myself, then I'll have been successful, and what most people can relate to at any level in their journey is they get to that point and they don't feel any more fulfillment at all than they did previously. In fact, they might even feel less, because what starts to happen is the gap between their net worth and their self-worth begins to grow even greater. And the larger that gets, the more you start to see people lacking that fulfillment and really feeling depression, anxiety, like a sense of, what is this all about? And I mean, that's such a part of, I think, the midlife discovery for so many people, especially men, but truly for any entrepreneur who's, or, somebody who's aspired to multiple roles in their career. They achieve them, they get wealth, they get the house, they get all of these things. And then their net worth has grown exponentially while their self-worth has remained the same. And that gap leaves them feeling even more empty.
So the self-worth obviously hasn't kept up with the net worth, if you will. How does someone like me work on the self-worth part? How do I help the self-worth continue to grow so that you don't have a big gap? And how the heck did you figure all this out?
Well, so important, probably, disclaimer here is the part where I say, and will remind you, I know nothing. Okay. And the more I learn, the less I know. And so to say I figured anything out, good God, I would never suggest such a thing. But I have sought and sought and sought the wisdom of many. And I have felt the absolute implosion of getting to a certain place in life and discovering that I had never truly done the work to develop the character that I aspired to, nor the sense of internal validation and self-worth that I would have needed to sustain some of life's pressures. And then that's where I crumbled and made a number of mistakes that really, tore the life I knew apart. And so, it was in that seeking that I found some really wise people who were able to offer me some insights. And most of what I'll share with you today and share with anyone that I'm working with is this premise of simply what I'm learning, right? Here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm seeing. And so I'll answer a couple questions here. One, you asked, like, how does somebody do this? Because so often, Maxwell talks about the law of the lid, and that your team will never grow as to the point that you've passed. Your team will never grow past the point that you've grown to. Okay. Now, I think that this is actually much better, from my observations, demonstrated in, it's not that the height to which you've grown, but rather the rate at which you demonstrate continuous growth. And you'll create the velocity at which your team will grow. And so that means that there's a constant humility to the learning and a vulnerability in admitting, I was wrong here, I made a mistake there. I'm actually discovering that, that I wasn't right about that, or learning to apologize quickly. Letting people know, wow, I was wrong to speak to you like that. I raised my tone, and rather than the justification that so many leaders find themselves in. Well, if they were just, if they would just get it, if they would just get bought in, if they would just, that I needed to respond that way. So,
hey, how about you stop being such a stupid idiot?
Yeah. It's like, I'll try being nicer if you try being smarter. And so there's this constant justification of our behavior, because what's happening is we're still reacting from, and now this will answer the next question, how do we start to do this? 80 to 90% of a human's personality and character is fully formed by the age of 8. All right. Now, this is what the science, not Instagram science, is what the actual science shows us. And the only argument is whether it's 80 or 90%. And so what you start to realize is that nearly every program that's operating, and 99% plus of human behavior, comes from the non-conscious, the unconscious, the subconscious, whatever you want to call it. So it's not what we're thinking, it's what we're actually feeling. It's from our belief system. It's these deep, deep parts of us that are inherent, and they're patterns, they're programs that run over and over and over again. And when you start to realize that 80 to 90% of what we do, who we are, and what we believe came by the age of 8, you start to discover that all people are, and this is what I do my best to remember in coaching and in life when I can, it's a whole bunch of little kids walking around in adult costumes. Truly, that's what we are. And, we get confused because we want to believe that we're how old are you now?
41.
You just, 41. I was bummed I couldn't be at your 40th birthday.
We had a lot of
I
fun.
know you did. I would have loved to have been there. So,
Big old ranch party.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Dude, and then another thing.
You were missed.
Dude, this is another great point. Like, so I know the right thing to say is that I'm so happy for you, for the ranch, the success, everything else. But the reality, my first thought is I'm so fucking jealous of you. Like, that's the first emotion that I have. It's envy. It's jealousy when I see someone achieving at a level beyond that, or as I wish I could. Right. And I have to be aware, like, that's that little kid inside of me that sees somebody else with a toy or money or a life that's better and bigger, and that goes, I want that. That's not fair. Right. I have to become aware of that and, like, acknowledge that, not beat myself up for it. Right. And just listen and go, okay, what is it really going on for you right there? Right. Well, what is it? It's once again a sense that I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my pursuit. And so,
but we don't stop and think that, do we? We just let the program run and we go, screw that guy. We don't even think of it.
And then if we can, we'll find the reasons, the circumstantial reasons.
Yeah. Oh, he's lucky, or he's got family inheritance, or he's got, somebody gave him that, or whatever.
Possibly strong hairline. Yeah. It's just, right. We'll find these things that we can cite that because they got that, they have that. Right. And so that's all the rationalization and the work of the ego to try to keep us perfect. Right.
So it helps us make sense of where we are.
Yeah. And it helps us make sense, which is very important. That's a critical insight. We need to make sense of things. Human beings need to make sense of things. And so we're always trying to put things in a pattern. And those patterns were mostly developed in the nervous system by the age of 8.
Jeez.
And so like, the mistake is Charlie, you might be like, well, at 41 years old, I know better. I should know better, or whatever. And the mistake is you start to think you're the 41-year-old version of Charlie without realizing it's like an accordion. You're the 0 through 41-year-old version. Those parts never go away. They're embedded in the process, in the program, right? So now, and with 80 to 90% of the influence being from those ages 0 through 8.
80 to 90% of the influence is from that period of time.
Yeah.
So everything you add on top of that's just nothing compared to it.
Comparatively, right? Unless you start to do the work to go back and work within the original programming, to start to listen to it and understand it.
Is this why a lot of people do work on their inner child?
Exactly.
I mean, you hear this all the time, and I can't help but say, that seems a little inner child, really?
Yeah.
But now it's starting to make sense. So you're saying reprogramming the inner child, almost, that 0 to 8.
To bring it even further into the, to the terminology that makes most people resist, it's the reparenting of the inner child.
Oh my.
That's the premise.
Like, you have to reparent your inner child.
That's it.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. And
how the heck do you do? I have so many questions right now.
Good.
How do you do that?
But see, and there's, by the way, beauty. So I commend you, because curiosity is such a wonderful place to start.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than the resistance. So, you might note, like, I think you even noted, like, an inner child. Like,
I am all adult over here. Okay.
Yeah. Big tough man. I'm a big boy. Right. And so the ego wants us to believe that this, right? Because the moment that we have to go back and start to do that work, well, there's a vulnerability to that. There's an enormous vulnerability to that.
Yeah.
I mean, just for two men in their 40s to be sitting here talking about reparenting the inner child, like, this is something that
this wasn't on my bingo card for today.
And it's not. And it's, and so, the work I've been, one of the great influences in my life more recently has been David Dayan Fisher. And
David Dayan Fisher?
David Dayan Fisher.
Okay.
Yeah. And he is actually a phenomenal social media follow, Instagram follow. More importantly, his book, The Map, was an extraordinary read. But what his teaching, along with, and then we're just going for it, right? Along with I've sought multiple trips to Costa Rica to sit with the shaman and to experience and learn from their
So
wisdom.
you've done
and
a
their
bunch of different
medicines.
things.
Yeah. I join a cult every year. Like it's very, very, very important to continuously immerse myself in some very cult-like experience for a little while
Sure.
and see what version of me comes out. Yeah.
So
But
you're just taking a sampling of the discovery of yourself throughout all these different experiences.
yes. And I mean, I do it primarily in my ongoing quest for some sense of peace and progress and joy and fulfillment, that has been elusive for me in my lifetime, despite achieving plenty of successes beyond which I was supposed to have been happy, supposed to be enough. And I struggle still. And I see it in so many people. So yeah, I keep seeking and I keep sharing what I'm learning.
Where was that turning point for you when you realized I'm not happy and I have a lot of work to do?
Well, I mean, I think I can point to the saddest day of my life. It was the day after my dad's funeral, and we had just lost him to Alzheimer's. Although actually, that's not fair. I won't do him that disservice. We lost my dad to the fact that he chose, despite his altered state, he chose to stop eating and drinking because he was not going to let Alzheimer's beat him. One of the most courageous acts I've ever witnessed.
Wow.
So it was the day after his death, his funeral, excuse me, which was 18 months after my mother's funeral. And the day of his funeral, I said goodbye to my wife and my dog, as that was the last time I saw her, heading into our divorce, which had just become the next, had just been put in motion the week between his death and his funeral.
Oh my gosh.
And so I woke up in this hotel room completely alone. And I just had this extraordinary sense of everything I loved was gone. Some of it by way of just life, but so much of it by way of my own failures and missteps and, the things that I had done that cost me that marriage. And, oh, dude, I cried and sobbed. And it was in that moment that, it became really clear to me. It was like, there was no one left for me to take care of except for me. And that was the one person I had never truly taken care of. Now, I don't mean that in some selfless way. In fact, it was in the most selfish way. I would take care of the parts to feel good, the ways to numb myself, spending money, looking good. It wasn't like that. I took care of that shit. All right. But I did not ever learn how to care for the little kid. Right. And so in that moment, what was I feeling? Well, I was feeling the abandonment of a child that had just lost everybody that loved him, everyone he loved. And it was as though God said in that moment, like, all right, buddy, 42 years, I've been trying to teach you this lesson. Like, this is an inside out job. Now there's no one else for you to take care of. There's no one looking after you. There's no one checking in on you. Don't get me wrong, I have amazing friends and family, but like, there's nothing that replaces the parent or your partner.
Yeah.
Right. And in that moment, it was just like God said to me, like, all right, bud, like, you gonna figure this out now or what? And so that's what started the journey. That's what really, or that's what really, there were many things. Like, everybody loves to have the one point where everything changed. That was one of many. And by no means was it like low point on the way up. I mean, it got worse from there. It got really worse, a lot worse from there, and a lot more painful from there, because to start to strip those pieces apart and face that shit, all the ways in which I was constantly, seeking validation and coming to grips with the way that I related with women, the way that I related with money, the way that I was, seeking all this stuff. That was a very, very painful journey to go down. And in it, you know, you discover all of these things were mechanisms of trying to mask and create for me validation. I realized, I shouldn't speak for anyone else, I realized these were all ways of masking and trying to create validation for a little kid that never felt like he was enough, never felt worthy, felt like there was something wrong, and there was something wrong with him. And so, you know, you ask, how do you do this work? Well, the first part of it, and Fisher talks about this, and I had the chance to do a call with him that was absolutely extraordinary. And, you know, it begins with, and I think most importantly, is it starts with the breath. You and I already did the physiological exhale. All right. It's a, you know, the deep breath.
Tell us how to do it again.
Yeah, this was Huberman. I got the chance when I was working with, I interviewed Andrew Huberman recently.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, along
Love
with Peter
him.
Attia, which,
Wow.
yeah, that was fascinating. And
Wow.
also he's in the news for not great reasons lately.
Yeah.
But nothing can take away the wisdom of both of those men and what I was able to learn. But Huberman talked about this extraordinary, this breath that they discovered, which was an interventionist bit of breath work, meaning that you could interrupt and reset the nervous system with a simple breath. And
One breath.
One breath, yeah. Well, kind of two. So it's as deep an inhale as you can take through the nose, and then at the top of the breath, when your lungs are full, you catch one more sip of air, and then you do a long exhale out through the mouth.
Can we do one?
I'd love to. I'd love as many times a day as you can. So
It's so calming.
mm-hmm.
How often do you do that? Are you like the weird guy on the airplane?
Yes. Oh God, yes. Oh my God, dude.
Well, you don't like flying.
I hate turbulence. I like flying. I like the smooth part of flying. I don't like the turbulence part. Dude, I was literally doing them because we were laughing about you and I earlier about when I flew with you last year. And
we were coming home from Austin, I think.
Yeah.
And you hitched a ride with me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I came back up, hitched a ride with you.
It was a bad day.
And you are an extraordinary pilot. It's one of the things I admire most about you is how seriously you take it, how good you are at it. It's remarkable. It really is talk about impressive. It's extraordinary.
Thanks.
Now, that said, that ride was fucking terrifying. Can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay, thank God, because it'd be done in 10 minutes if you limit me. So, I mean, absolute. I was a wreck.
Yeah.
I was a wreck.
Yeah,
And you and Jess were just like, oh, no big deal. Everything's great. You know, just like easy as could be.
And that was pretty light turbulence, but I remember that day because we were flying along, and when you're talking to air traffic control, you hear everybody else talking. Yeah. And it was Delta, Southwest. Everybody was like, hey, is there a better altitude? Because we're all getting beat up. And I just remember ATC being like, all altitudes have turbulence right now. And I remember looking back at you being like, I don't think I'm going to tell him that.
See, that's just good parenting from you to me, because I didn't need any more information.
Remember, I was like, it's getting better sooner. It'll be all right.
Oh God. Oh, that's amazing. Now, there is something to be said. I'll share this quick little, I'll intervene with this quick little piece of information that I think is really powerful. And when it comes to how you're able to impact and influence people, what we tend to do is we want to try to make people feel better by saying to them, you know, oh, this won't be so bad. There's some great research around this with phlebotomists or nurses who take blood and you know, use needles. And what they found was that patients who were told this won't hurt very much, or it's just a little pinch, experience more pain than the ones who said, no, this is going to hurt. And so when we tell people something's going to be actually as bad or worse than it is, their experience is actually less pain.
So it's the opposite of what you think you want to do.
Exactly. Exactly. This is such a big part, and this is such a big part of how we try to manage people's feelings and manage our own experience, and also how we even sometimes do the same with ourselves. But that power. So like, for example, if you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody, instead of saying to them, you know, hey, please don't be offended, or, you know, like, you know, hey, you know, look, this is just, it's something that I've noticed. Instead, just you say to them, hey, I'm going to share something with you that's going to be hard for you to hear, right? Or it's going to be difficult to hear, or it may hurt. And you let the person know that. And then as they're now braced and you go into the very direct delivery of the information, you actually see people much more able to accept and hear and process the information that you're sharing with them. And so, for what it's worth, I guess in that
So I should have
moment,
said, it's
Yeah.
going to get worse,
yeah,
man.
yeah, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. and I suppose, although I don't know, man, I don't think anything was gonna help me that day. But yeah, but that is a really powerful tool for people to learn how to deliver difficult information.
Yeah.
All right. So look, I don't want to miss though. To just circle back, so Fisher's work and that idea of the parenting of the reparenting of the inner child. So it starts with the breath, and what we need to understand is 99% of our behavior comes from the non-conscious, the unconscious. So that's the subconscious mind, right? So we talk about the mind. Now, if I asked you to point to the mind, where would you point? And I don't know what you're going to say, but I'll
Probably point to my head.
Right. Okay. So nearly everybody points to their head. And this is probably the greatest disservice and misunderstanding we have as human beings, because the mind, which is the subconscious mind, is processing 11 million bits of data per second. The conscious mind,
It sure feels like that sometimes.
Well, fair, because of overwhelm. Now, here's why. Because the conscious mind, the prefrontal cortex, the logical portion of the brain where we do critical thinking, it can only handle 50 bits of data per second.
And we're getting 11 million?
11 million. So what's actually making up all of our decision making and everything else is reactivity of the mind. And the mind is far better understood as the nervous system, of which the brain is only a portion. And so I don't know if this is like the Joe Rogan podcast where people can pull up like an image or whatever. Sure. But if you look up, nervous system actual, all right, so just like nervous system actual and pull up the images, it's these incredible images of the brain and the eyes and this whole body of a nervous system. It looks like a little alien.
Yeah. I've seen it. It looks like just a million tree branches in the shape of a body.
Going all through the body.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where we start to understand that the way we've actually learned to be us is very, very little of it is in the brain. That's only a portion that is a processing center. But it's actually the entirety of the nervous system is the non-conscious or the unconscious. So most personal development and most coaching and everything else is deep in the thought process, thinking your way through things. And we tend to try to think our way through how we're feeling, think our way through how we're thinking, think our way through problems and everything else. But, Tony Robbins even shares that the most powerful compulsion known to humankind is to remain consistent with one's own identity. And we think of that in the language of the I ams and I am nots, like how we've come to understand ourselves to be. But what I have started to realize, and that is having such a profound effect on me, is much more powerful than the thought of who we are, is the feeling of who we are. That we will remain consistent with the feeling of who we are. The emotional sense, the physical sense of what it feels like to be us, which is the nervous system, of which 80 to 90% of it was programmed by the age of 8.
Whoa.
And in that, it was programmed and a narrative was attached to it.
A narrative was attached to it.
So we inherited the first part directly from our mom, literally in the womb.
Okay.
And then the next 80 to 90% was programmed by the household we were brought up in, the little bubble that we were raised in, whatever that looked like. With a bunch of, mind you, 8-year-olds
teaching us,
being our parents, being the adults in our lives that just looked like parents because they're just little kids dressed up in adult costumes, doing their best to teach us what we're supposed to know and then creating how we're supposed to feel. And so we create this whole narrative and this feeling of being us. And so the first times that we get in trouble or discover that we're not safe or discover that we did something wrong, and we've only got the prefrontal cortex of an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old. And so we start to attach narratives to that say things like, there's something wrong with me. I'm not safe. I'm bad. Right? And we start to develop these little talk tracks that live and they start to take root. And then those in concert with this whole sense of being the body. Now we feel like we hear them up here, but we feel them throughout the mind, throughout the nervous system.
And you said mind as you're touching your chest. So
That's
you're
right.
really saying my entire body is my mind.
A far greater understanding of the mind is to understand that it is the entirety of the body. It is the nervous system. We are programmed to feel things faster than we can think them. This is how we survive.
We can feel them faster than we can think them.
That's
Because you're
correct.
getting 11 million in, you can process 50. So
Right.
you have to survive through being able to deal with those 11 million.
Exactly. And the 11 and that non-conscious has already programmed these feelings to protect us. Okay. So now things happen when we get older, right? So maybe you've developed an inner narrative that says something like, well, I'll use an example of my own that comes up that I think people can relate to. And I mean, I talk a lot about myself. Some ways self-serving.
Pretty
some ways-
fascinating discoveries you've had. So talk away.
The hope is for people to learn from it, but it's the best. I speak for myself and then let people draw from it what they may. But for me, I have this inner narrative, but it's very clear to me. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with me, right? There's something wrong, and there's something wrong with me.
How long have you had that?
Since I was a
kid,
child, as young as can be. I mean, and I don't even find too much power in going back to find the moment, although that can be sometimes really like up leveling and stuff like that. But I've got some stuff that I discovered in my work with the shaman when I drank ayahuasca, some stuff that I saw from my past that whether it's real or not, I can't even be sure, but it's somewhere in there that it came out. So that kind of gives me a pretty good pretty clear image of it. But now, right, let's say I'm pursuing a romantic relationship or something, and I don't get a text back for a while. Instead of all of the logical ways of thinking my way through that as an adult version of me might be able to do, instead I immediately default to that feeling. There's something wrong. There's something wrong with me. And so now I start communicating from a desire to get that feeling fixed.
You want to fix it.
Right.
Because you're uncomfortable now.
Yes. But here's what's happened is I've outsourced my validation, right?
To someone else.
Exactly. So now for me to be okay, you need to tell me I'm okay. And you need to behave the way I want you to behave for me to be okay. All right. And so now this is where the controlling and the manipulation and all these things are coming from. Now, 99% of people and myself for years and years would just come to the conclusion like, well, no, it's just rude to not get back to me. Or I just want to know that you're okay. Dude, so full of shit. Like when I actually started to uncover all these layers, I'm like, no, it's not about me making sure you're okay. It's me wanting to feel okay myself. And so now I'll use what? I'll use a little bit of that guilt that I inherited from mom, right? I'll use a little bit of that, just a little serving of Catholic guilt. And, now my text is, hey, can you just get back to me? I want to make sure you're okay. Right? Something like that. And so now I've used a little guilt to make that person respond.
And you're saying now, like you learned you do that as a way to get what you need from them.
Exactly.
So you're working on not doing any of that now.
Oh, I mean, a million things. So the first thing now, right?
I'm gonna make sure I respond to you immediately from now on.
Well, this would be the ultimate manipulation.
I got called compulsive the other day from Big D Dan telling me that I respond to my texts too quickly.
Oh, that's adorable.
I was like, I think I'm gonna put my phone down, Dan.
I need to find the female version of you then. That's perfect. Somebody who's constantly getting right back. That would be amazing. But the reality is like, so now this is the how do I do this, right? So how do I do this? So this is from Fisher's work. So I start with the breath, okay? Because what's going to happen is in that moment, something's wrong. There's something wrong with me. So now the narrative starts. The breathing goes shallow. What's happened? The nervous system is remembering what it feels like to be me as a little kid.
It's spooling up.
Right. Because when you're a little kid, right, you didn't just do something wrong, right? You didn't just do something, but maybe you didn't do any of those things at all. But somewhere in that, you did something, your source of everything, your parents, reprimanded you. Shame, guilt set in. And
negative consequence.
And then that became the feeling. And so instead of being able to put an applicable, when I was 5, being like, wow, dad must be really overtired from working 2 jobs, right? My response to how he responded to the way I wet the bed was, there's something wrong with me. Okay, because that's the inner narrative. But then this thing continues to live on within us. And so the nervous system creates that feeling. So the first step is that breath, right? Start to capture the breath. And then the internal dialogue starts. Me with the child, with the little kid that's still in there. So hand to the heart. Starts with reassurance. I got you. I got you. And then You learn to ask the question, what are you feeling right now? What are you feeling? All right. And if you listen, again, this takes the courage, but you listen to the little kid. Now the little kid will answer you back. And Fisher told me, he said, you're going to be amazed. He said, you are going to be amazed at what you hear. Now, the logical 40 whatever year old version of me is going to have all of these explanations. Well, I'm just worried about this person. I just think it's rude. They're being disrespectful. Right? But what that little kid will say back, and I've discovered because I listen, is he'll say something like, I'm scared. I'm all alone. Okay. And you start to listen and it's going to sound like that because it's not going to be the words of a 44-year-old that can justify everything. It's going to be the words of a little kid that just is sharing raw what the emotions are, what the experience is. And now you have the chance with all of your new faculties, right? How old are your kids now? They're much older.
15, 13, and 10.
10. Okay.
Yeah.
So we can take the 10-year-old, right? Because now if the 10-year-old came to you and said, Dad, there's something wrong with me. Imagine how you would react to that. I mean, could you ever consider looking at that child at 10, at 8, at 7, at 5, and thinking there's anything wrong with that child?
No.
They're fucking perfect.
Yeah.
They're perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, but instead, as adults, to suppress that fear, we tell ourselves we talk all this shit to ourselves, like toughen up, be a man,
You're fine.
You're fine. You're going to be fine. Whatever.
You're better than them.
Right. And so that's how we talk to ourselves instead of letting that child be heard and then reparenting.
So how do you reparent now that you've heard that voice?
Well, let's start here. I mean, and I can maybe offer you some insights, but if I were to ask you, if your child came to you, it's, one of those babies of yours came to you when they were 6, 7, 8 years old and said, there's something wrong with me. Or they said, your dad, I'm scared.
Yeah.
What would you say? Would you tell them they're not? Would you say you're not scared? What would you say to them?
If they said they were scared, I would tell them that they don't have to be afraid because I'm with them.
Okay. So there it is, right? I got you. I'm here.
Yeah, you're not alone.
Okay. So now that's that conversation. Now if they listen, now maybe you learn to ask them a question too. Tell me, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid we're going to be alone. Oh. Right? But you don't tell them they're wrong.
You don't tell them they're wrong.
No. You go, oh, sweetie, of course. And I remember that moment that I was first doing this after he taught me. And I couldn't believe, the voice came back, said, I'm scared. We're all alone. And my heart broke. Right? Because the adult version of me heard the little kid and went, oh my God, buddy. That's totally fair. I completely understand why you feel like that. We've lost a lot of people that we love. And then suddenly, right now there's an opening there. And now there's the ability to say, but I'm here. And we also have a lot of people that still love us.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be okay. And so now this is the reparent of the version that didn't exist.
I can tell this makes you really emotional.
Yeah.
Is
it the tears in my eyes?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I can tell you've really worked hard on this.
Yeah. Well, it's hard work. But I think what, beyond my own experience for myself of what makes me emotional is when I think about how many people are living in this state and they don't have the guidance or the permission to have these conversations with themselves, and when you start to, like I said, I see people in the world, and when I remember, and I forget often, and we should talk about that, and I remember that this is just an 8-year-old walking around in an adult costume. Suddenly that aggression that you see demonstrated in traffic or in the world, that's just a really scared little boy, right? Or that person that's seeking attention, and you kind of like, oh God, look at this person online doing this or that. And then it's like, oh my God, that's a little girl that just wants to know that she's seen.
So it gives you a lot more empathy for the rest of humanity.
Dude. The softness that has come from this. The softness that has come from this is extraordinary. Yeah. And there's so much of it is about first the softness for me, right? And learning to take care of me. And then how much more equipped I feel, that I can be there as a guide for others.
I'm just sitting here processing all of this as you're explaining it. And, my 50 bits of information are running out of control, but I think about the emotion that this has brought to you. Do you think everybody has that in them if they start discovering it? Like I for some reason I have, and I don't know why, and maybe I just haven't done the work. And that's very possible. But I have a hard time thinking of the 8-year-old version of me and talking to him.
Yeah.
Maybe it's ego. Maybe the ego is just so overpowering that's like, shut up, kid, get out of the way. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do, like, I admire the reflection that you have done and you are doing right in front of me. And I go, do I have that in me?
Yeah. So, again, prefacing that I know nothing, I believe with all my heart you have this in you entirely. And I mean, everyone does. Everyone does. It's just science.
Do you think we all carry around like deep-seated childhood insecurity? Do we all have it?
100%. No.
Because I think about my childhood and I'm like, I had a pretty great upbringing and a very loving household that was really encouraging. I was always told you can do and be anything you want. I never had a parent that was telling me I was stupid or, and which I know is very fortunate for me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. What a gift. Absolutely.
And I thank my parents all the time for that. I mean, every birthday card I write them, I'm like, I had the best upbringing you could have given me.
Yeah.
But do you think that there's more to the story?
But certainly. Because look, to live for a day is to be hurt. You told, let's take an example. You recently shared that your partner had let you know that he was going to be moving on with his life and from the business. And what was your initial reaction?
Initially, I was hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So think about that. That's a perfect example. This is someone else, an adult, telling an adult, hey, I'm taking this next step in my business. But the feeling is to be hurt.
Yeah.
Well, why?
Because I didn't want to be alone.
There it is. There's the little kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the little kid, brother.
Yeah.
That's not, dude, look at what you fucking accomplished. Once you process through it, you're like, this is going to be great. I'm going to be able to do these things. I'm going to be able to, you got to the other side. But that initial reaction was the hurt.
Yeah, it was.
That was the little kid that just goes, I'm all alone. What do you mean you're leaving me?
So the goal's not to get rid of that kid.
No,
the goal's
far from it. Far from it. And
the
that's
goal is
the
to
thing.
get in touch with it for good.
And to heal it. Just to heal the little kid that has these natural fears. And every child experiences them, no matter how. There's, the buzzwords are in regard to trauma, right? Well, trauma is just an injury, right? And there's these wounds that occur. The question is whether or not they get healed. So do you have moments, Charlie, where you react disproportionately to the thing that is taking place?
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you have...
I had it happen today.
Tell me.
Well, I can't share the details.
Okay.
But I had a situation that seemed a lot bigger and worse than it actually was after about an hour of looking at it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I can't share it right now.
Yeah. So after an hour of
and talking it through with some other people.
Yeah. So
I got more like, oh, yeah, okay. It's gonna be fine.
So after an hour of thinking about it, you discovered you were overthinking? Yeah. Great. All right.
I mean, true.
Yeah. Well, but what it is, and I have a friend, Emily Romano, extraordinary coach. She has this saying. She says, overthinking is underfeeling. Because what happens is something happens and it triggers an old wound. So I see it all the time in coaching. I'll be working with somebody and suddenly I'll see this disproportionate emotional reaction to whatever just took place.
Yeah.
So we can use a hypothetical, but you've got the example, with Mike letting you know he was going to be moving on in his career, and you go to this, I'm hurt, right?
Yeah.
But you don't process it as the little kid that's like, I'm hurt. It immediately turns into a new narrative about something he's doing, right?
Sure.
He's doing something wrong, not right. It starts to manifest itself in another way. You see people that have like incredible reactions where they feel disrespected, right? They'll use language like that. Well, that was disrespectful. I don't trust that person. All these things. These are little kid manifestations, because those things aren't real. There's no such thing as disrespect. That's not a real thing. It's a made up concept. Show it to me. Right? It's an experience that we have, and it's a story that we tell. Okay. And in it, these disproportionate reactions, like what I call it when I'm working with somebody, is that somebody just got poked in a wound.
Oh.
Because there's something there unhealed in them that when that person said, I don't agree with that idea, they heard, you're stupid. Right? They felt the old programming that was from their childhood. And I work with all of these amazing people. We're constantly finding the pattern that goes back to a wound that didn't get the healing that it deserved.
This is so interesting that you're saying this right now, because as you're talking about it, and you were saying it's bringing up something from the past.
Yeah.
I think entrepreneurs and founders, actually, we really struggle with this. Not necessarily our childhood, but I started my business at 18. Yeah, I'm 41 now. I mean, I've had about every possible scenario you could have thrown at me. And I've gone through the pain and frustration of that. I mean, being in the events business through COVID, like I've had every type of people issue you could imagine. I've had people leave for competitors and stab us in the back. I mean, I've had it all. And I think it's interesting because as we grow and evolve, our spidey senses go off and remind us of something that happened before, even though probably it's not as big a deal today as it was, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Like it hurt you way worse then because whatever happened was way more impactful to you in the business when you were smaller.
Yeah.
But now that the business is bigger, that type of issue doesn't warrant that type of response anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so it triggers that, but it triggers it as if it's this big, huge deal because it was back then, right?
Very good. But what I would show you is that original, like that 18-year-old version. So you used a great phrase in here, stabbed us in the back.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that didn't happen.
No, it felt like it.
Okay. So notice again, felt like it.
Felt like it.
Okay. Again, we're emotional human beings. I don't care how fucking logical you are. You're governed by emotion. You're governed by the nervous system.
Yep.
Okay. So it felt like it.
It did.
Right? It felt like I got stabbed in the back. Well, dude, I can promise you, we could go back and you're going to find a much earlier episode of a friend or a loved one or somebody betraying you, stabbing you in the back. That was something that you learned as a kid, that feeling that you learned as a kid.
Yeah, I can think of it.
Okay. So now when that happened at 18 or 20 or 22 or whatever it wasn't that moment that felt stabbed. That was
it was just recalling.
Exactly. And that's the
so
wound.
We just go over it. Even we go through it like it was the original time because we never really addressed the issue.
Exactly. We feel it because it's a wound that's still open that just got poked.
So it's just a big red button you just go and hit.
Right.
So how do you get rid of the button?
The same way we just talked about. What are you feeling? Breathe. I got you. What are you actually feeling right now? And we go and we listen to that kid. So you talked about the fact that you had this incredible upbringing. You have to understand no parent is perfect, right? Certainly your parents wouldn't pretend at all that they were. They had their own shit that they were carrying.
Yeah, for sure.
So the only one that can ever do this work with you is you. Nobody had parents who got this right all the time or even had the insights of what the child was feeling to know how to get it right.
Yeah, you can't outsource this stuff.
No, the kid is just reacting and experiencing whatever's going on. He's not going to be able to sit there, and explain. I promise you, your parents hurt your feelings. I promise you, your parents said things, did things that trained you. Oh, I have to be this way to get love, or I have to, even some of their best traits might have been that when they were encouraging you and loving up on you. This isn't about finding fault with the parents. In fact, what it is most of all is finding, again, compassion and softness and forgiveness for everybody who's trying to just do the best that they can
Yeah.
with no fucking playbook. No playbook.
Yeah. I mean,
It takes less certification to be a parent than anything else on earth.
we had our first when I was like 25. 25. What do you know at 25? Honestly, you think you know a lot.
I sure thought I knew a lot more than I think I know now.
You've tipped me off to an idea. I used to think that the only thing a business like an entrepreneur couldn't outsource, because think about it, you're in the job of delegate and elevate, right? You get people to do the things that need to get done for the vision of the business,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
One of the things you can't outsource is your physical well-being.
Okay.
You must do that work.
Yeah.
You're the one that has to do the reps in the gym.
Yeah.
You have to choose what you eat. You have to do that work.
Mm-hmm.
And I have plenty of entrepreneur friends who realized that when it was almost too late.
Mm-hmm.
Then they put in the work, and it's incredible to see what's happened.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to realize it's not just your physical well-being that you have to do the work on. It's this stuff. I got to be honest, dude. I poo-poo the idea all day long of like talking to your inner kid.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like I'd be like, what are you going to go talk to your inner child?
Yeah.
And like, dig
Yeah.
up the wounds of the past. Like, to be honest, like before this conversation, I thought it was the dumbest, ridiculous crap. And now it
Sure.
makes total freaking sense.
Dude, I follow. Thank you for saying that. First of all, I so appreciate all of it. And by the way, if you still wanted to tell me that you don't believe it, that's okay.
No, I have 100% understood what the value is.
Good. And I'm thrilled.
I'm not sure I want to do it.
Very good. Very good. Very good. And you don't have to. But inevitably, eventually, right? You'll likely be confronted with the work that hasn't been done. It's inevitable.
So you might as well do it sooner.
Yeah. Now, I think maybe not. I don't know. It's not my job to tell you when to do it. It's not my job to tell. My only job is to do it for me.
Yeah.
Is to do it for me. Now, my actual job is to be hired to guide others where I see fit. And the best way I can say that is, as a coach, I just do my best to be a mirror for people, to show them what I'm seeing, to show them to themselves. Okay. And in Fisher's work, he talks about life is just a mirror. And so we're born in perfection. We're born in total perfection. Then we have all this shit that gets piled and programmed into us, into our nervous system. Now we become this little reactive nervous system, mostly dysregulated. Because I don't know, I love exploring, and I really love how amazing your parents were. Mine were too, by the way.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. I was very, very fortunate with how I grew up, and that didn't shield me from these, inherent
Natural things,
belief systems that were part of the religion, part of the faith, part of the time, all of these different things, part of their own circumstances. So now we become this little, ball of what our nervous system is, just operating on a program over and over and over again. And then we keep getting these results in our life. As far as relationships, success, whatever, some of them wonderful, some of them not. But all it is the world acts as a mirror. It's just constantly showing us to us. It shows us what we need to heal. It shows us what we need to work on. It shows us what we need to sit with. It's not anybody else. It's never anybody else. Once you move past that, and even when you're a little kid, even if you're going through horrific things as a little kid, now it's not, at that point, there's only so much you can do, but as an adult to heal from it, it's still you. It still has to be you. Nobody can do this work for you.
Is this a lifelong journey? Is this like you're always seeking this, or is it like, no, I did this work, I'm good?
Oh God, I don't know. I can tell since this is all of my life that I've lived, it's a lifelong journey because I'm not anywhere near it, but I'm a little quicker.
Are you more forgiving?
Oh God, of others? Extraordinarily, yeah. Of self, I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
So you still have moments where you're like, you don't forgive yourself.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you know, I mean, I failed as a husband, horrendously. And I think about what that work was, that I was to do. And I see now, like it was a mirror. It showed me the work I hadn't done. And my complaints were with her. You're not focused on being a good wife. You're not showing up in these ways. You're not doing it right. Again, because why? Because I was outsourcing my validation. So I needed her to be a certain way for me to be okay. And like, just think about how exhausting that is for the other person. I mean, fuck.
Exhausting.
But also that's just me hiding from me. It was just me hiding from me. So then I look at the hurt that I caused, and yeah, that's been really hard work to forgive myself for that.
Yeah.
Really hard work.
You think you're there yet?
No.
You'll get there. With a mindset like yours, come on.
We'll see. And
just put some dirt on it and you'll be fine.
So I spoke at an event a couple of years ago with Brad Lee. You know Brad Lee?
I love Brad.
No, of course.
Yeah, Brad's a good friend.
Yeah. Oh, fucking perfect.
I love Brad.
Yeah, great. So
we were just on the phone talking about my podcast studio.
Dude, you'll love that. Go ahead and bring up that Keith Mercurio was talking about the reparenting of the inner child. Brad Lee follows me up on stage. I'm talking about like all this, this gentle softness stuff. And Brad Lee's like, Keith would have you say that you're supposed to be up here being nice to your little child. I say, give that kid a kick in the ass. I'm like, Jesus Christ. And what's so perfect, and Brad, can fucking do what Brad, he wants with this. Yeah. But in that moment, I was like, oh man. I was like, that's just a little kid right there. That was literally 8-year-old Brad, and the only way he knew how to handle that shit was to say some dumb shit like that.
Brad, I know you're watching, dude.
To try to get a laugh. Right? Because it was uncomfortable for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
but that's part of his brand too, It's get off your ass.
Of course it is.
Yeah, it's great.
And I'm not here to criticize it.
No.
I'm not here to criticize it. But, give me...
That is pretty funny, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was great. And now, for me... I was like, oh, right? Because I know enough, like he didn't do anything to me. That wasn't a shot at me.
That's funny.
That was his shit, not mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, think how many times we always look at when somebody says something critical of us, we always immediately go, oh my gosh, I'm so terrible. Mm-hmm. Or, when really a lot of times when people say nasty things to you, it's just a reflection of who they are.
Indeed. But I just want to ask you for a second. So you have that experience when you're criticized, that you internalize that?
It has happened. Yeah, for sure. I'm a human.
Yeah. So I'm asking, in the course of this conversation, I've shared with you like my little internal narrative, this thought, there's something wrong with me. Mm-hmm. Right? Has anything occurred to you that you have that's sort of a programmed like self-talk thing that's negative, where you go to some version of that?
Yeah. Growing up, I wasn't very popular, and I didn't really excel at sports mm-hmm. or really any of the extracurricular things. I wasn't a great student. I knew I wanted to be in business, but I never had external validation through high school, I wasn't a good student, and I wasn't good at anything. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really have like a friend group that made me feel like I was at home. I was always kind of a lone wolf. And so, yeah, there's been times where I have thought to myself, like, what am I doing wrong that I can't, especially when I was in like high school, like, what am I doing wrong that I'm not being accepted by people?
Perfect. So just, that is so fucking beautiful. So there's your narrative. What am I doing wrong? Right? Now, I would guess if you backed it up a little further, it's even less about the doing and more about the what's wrong with me.
For sure. I think we all have that to some degree.
All right. Well,
maybe.
Yeah. But speak for yourself in this moment, because if you do, that's what matters.
Yeah.
Okay. And sure, I think we can find comfort in the collective that we do. This is what I'm offering, is that all humans I believe, have some version of this.
Yeah.
But, I'm here thinking about you in this moment. And so if you were to look at, like, if you've got an internal narrative of there's something wrong with me, what am I doing wrong that's causing people not to like me? And then start to map out the life that you've created, right? You could, I suspect, very easily start to see the parts where the impressive part, the seeking the external validation.
Yeah, I've created reasons for people to like me. That I think they'll like me. Yeah.
There you go, brother.
Yeah.
All right.
It
so,
is
go ahead.
funny though, because it was probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago where I started making enough money to be comfortable. You know, those years where you transition from being like dirt poor. I mean, we were on food stamps when we were early married. I mean, we had nothing. And that further drove me to be like, something in me is not right and I need to fix it, and I'm going to go get what I deserve. Some of that was also a drive to provide for my wife and kids, right? Like, I don't want them to live like
Of
that.
course. So,
Yeah.
sorry, what were you going to say next?
Well, what that did is it created a drive in me to prove to myself that I do have value. And then I went harder on improving our business and growing it and finding purpose in what we do. And that's where I started to find happiness, because I realized it doesn't matter what Range Rover you have or where you live. It doesn't matter what watch you have on your wrist. And trust me, I have plenty of them. They don't make you happy. You know, you hear it all the time. Well, stuff doesn't make you happy. Well, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
What's made me happy is finding purpose in other people's joy.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I find my happiness. And so I made my mission here at my company. I don't care about the money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, money is like oxygen to a business. You have to have it. But I want to see our people happy and live the life that makes them happy. And that has brought me joy and purpose, not stuff, not the new Range Rover, not the new whatever, right? Those things are fun, but those are just a side effect of doing good for other people. And I kind of had it backwards from very early on. It was like, maybe other people will like me if I have nice stuff. It was like, no, people will like you when you help them.
Very good.
So that's been my mission. It's just, I want to help my team. I want to help my family. I want to make people better. I want to provide stuff like that.
All right. Now I want to share something that I'm hearing that's on my heart. Yeah. People will like me if.
Yeah.
So you've elevated your purpose in a gorgeous way, right? A very Christian way of serving, right? Way of showing up as a community man, as a dad, as a husband, as a provider. And I've watched this because I've worked with so many people who have elevated their businesses in this way with this purpose. Oh, this is what brings me joy now. Hearing this story from this person who bought their first house and this person who did, and this is fucking wonderful, right? This is a fabulous way of being in what it creates in the world. And the world operates because of people like you. It truly does. I admire so much, and so many of the entrepreneurs I work with are born of this spirit. What you'll notice is that the root language of the spirit is still one of insecurity. People will like me if. So then I watch these amazing entrepreneurs, they sell their business, and now they have 150, 250 million. And now, for a little while, checking the bank account kind of feels pretty good.
Yeah.
And the private flights and the next house and everything else might feel pretty good. And then if the inner work hasn't been done, brother, the walls come crashing down. Because people will like me if I provide this for them, if I provide that for them, if I create an industry, if I create a business, if I create a job, if I create money, if I create experiences. And that's still all the language of external validation. My purpose is still being driven by what
them
I'm getting
liking
back.
me if, oh, I'm going to pick up the check at dinner. It's going to be great.
Yeah. And fucking dude, that's okay. And I want to make sure that I'm really clear about this. Don't stop doing that shit, especially tonight when we go out to dinner. Don't stop doing that shit. All right. I am fully here to support. I think as providers, as men serving that purpose, trust me, I've experienced the loss of providing for people, and it's there's an emptiness to that too. It's really, really meaningful to keep doing that, and we should, and you should. I am not suggesting differently. What's really important, though, is to not confuse that with you being enough, because that is still all a model of external validation. That is still all performative. If I do this, then I get love.
Why do you think we default to wanting external validation? Because it seems to be really common.
Well, this is where you have to go back to your parents. Okay, because our original source, the original currency of life, is love and validation. So our parents teach us to be the way they want us by way of love and validation. We get love and attention when we do good, whatever good is to them. It could be being polite, it could be being handsome, it could be being a good boy, it could be being tough, it could be being, a good student, it could be, being a pretty girl, whatever it is. That's the original programming. And so the child, unable of making the distinction, learns, if I do this, then I get love. And if I don't do this, then love is taken away. Right? So if I do these bad things, or if I'm bad, I lose this. If I'm good, I get this. And so now the whole map gets programmed in the child, in the nervous system, imprinted. And now that feeling of being us becomes our programming. And so now little 5, 6, 7-year-old Charlie, through no fault of his parents, but entirely the doing of his parents, learns, if I'm this way, I get love and attention. That's the original currency that we seek. And so then the rest of our lives are spent, until we start doing the reprogramming, the rest of our lives are spent, most people with no awareness of this, just chasing the love and attention, the validation. It's just natural. It's just what we do.
It's age old.
It's age old from the beginning of time.
Yeah.
This is how parents raise children.
Now you got me all worried about how I've raised my kids since they're all past the age of 8. I'm like, oh gosh.
No, don't worry about it. They're fucked. All right. You're going to have to make a new one if you want to start over. All right.
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to do this.
Okay.
Will you come back and we can talk even deeper on some of these ideas?
I'd love to, if that's what life and
I would love that.
The world allows.
I want to talk more about some of these other principles you teach. I think there's so much value that I got so much value here. This was incredible. But I want to have you back because I want to talk more about these things.
Let the coach in me do what I do, though. What specifically for your audience? Because dude, the people that listen to this show admire you so much, and they gain so much from what they see you doing. Yeah. So what will you do with this? What will you do with this as far as your actual key takeaways? Putting you on the spot. And
No, you're not. Yes, you are putting him on the spot, but I already have thought about this.
Okay.
I think the first thing I'm going to do that I'm going to implement, and every single time I do a podcast, I walk away with something that's just life-changing. This has been so life-changing to do this podcast.
I bet.
Because of this.
Yeah, of course.
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the breath, take a pause, and just take stock of what that actual feeling is. And I'm just going to remind myself, I'm going to remind my little child. It sounds so weird considering
I could hear it.
Could you tell me? I'm just
I could
what?
Hear it.
I'm gonna try it. Next time I feel this, which happens, probably all the time. Probably don't even realize how much it happens. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna remind myself that everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah. You're okay. I got you.
I feel like there's so much burden that could be gone if I could get in this habit. Is that not?
Say more on that. I know we got to wrap up, but say more on that.
Well,
It's your fucking studio. What do you mean we have to wrap up? Do anything you want.
I think there's a lot of burden we carry, especially as entrepreneurs. We carry a lot of burden because we're carrying the weight, or we think we're carrying the weight of the organization and its people and the families and your family and the expectations and all the things that you have to uphold. Part of me just wants to let that crap go. Just go, I don't care. But the problem is, but I do care. Like, I care about that, because if I just said I don't care.
Yeah, I can't wait till Jessica watches.
Yeah, she's gonna be like, "What
the fuck, Keith?"
No, but I think it releases you of a burden that you need to prove something.
So this is so good, and this is the decoupling that I'm talking about. I'm not suggesting that you stop providing, stop driving, stop being who you are. It's just not any longer fooling yourself or allowing yourself to hide from the reality that what we're seeking is this sense of feeling like enough. And if you've got it in your mind and your body from childhood, there's something wrong with me. What is it about? What am I doing that people don't like? People will like me if, then this is still all going to be a really painful discovery, when no matter how much you've created, no matter how much you've done for others, no matter what, that you still have the sense that I'm not enough. And, you know, I think if you were willing to really sit with it, you know, I suspect that you, and I think you've said as much today, that you do feel that. You do have that sense that the burden is not to provide. You've already provided. Dude, I've seen you guys have enough money. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. All right. And everybody here can find another job. All right. Everyone's going to be fine. So clearly there's something more. And I want you to keep, but you can start to decouple it. I do this because I choose to, not because I have to in order to feel like enough. And as you continue to decouple and start to just like recognize what's driving it, now you start to become conscious of that choice. And it's no longer a burden, it's a choice. Because it's a burden right now, because how else are you supposed to operate? It's the only thing you've known since you were a child. I have to do this in order to feel like enough, in order to be loved, in order to be liked.
It's a hell of a motivator.
It is. It's the ultimate, which is why there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it.
But we become a slave to it.
That's right.
So you're saying quit being a slave to it.
If you want.
I love it. Gosh, dude, you are a great teacher. And I'm really grateful for you. And I'm grateful for our friendship. I'm grateful for the work that you are doing in yourself so you can share it with me. I mean that. And I would like to ask you one last question.
Okay. Please. I also wanted to ask if I could share one last story.
Why don't you share your story first?
Okay. All right. So all this work I told you, I go and I am broken to bits. And I go and I seek, the ancient wisdom of the shaman. I go into the jungle of Costa Rica.
You know, Jesus can take your brokenness right now.
Ooh, I met Jesus.
You met Jesus?
I did.
Story for another day, maybe.
When I come back, I'll tell that story.
Okay.
Fascinating, because it involves the same shaman.
Okay.
Involves the same shaman. So I go to the jungles of Costa Rica. I'm seeking the ancient wisdom of the Amazon, and hoping, praying, just anything that I will be healed, right? That this pain will be taken away of how I'm experiencing myself. And I meet my shaman, Chris. Fucking Chris from Pittsburgh.
Your shaman's name is Chris from Pittsburgh.
Dude, I was livid.
I thought he was going to have like a cool mystical name.
Of course, so did I. Think about my disappointment. I'm like, I can't tell my friends that my shaman was Chris from Pittsburgh. Like, this is such bullshit. So I'm down there. I'm beside myself. I'm seeking the ancient wisdom of the Amazon. I mean, Pittsburgh isn't even the oldest city in Pennsylvania, for God's sakes. Like, I am pissed.
You're
right?
like, what?
So, but like so many things, right? This is a moment to learn, right? Like, oh God, now something's wrong with me. This isn't real if he's not who he's supposed to be. Well, of course, this man would turn out to be one of the great guides in my life. And are you familiar with ayahuasca at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. The basic premise, it's a psychosomatic effect. So you drink this medicine, it sort of interrupts the ego. It breaks the processing of the conscious mind so that you have total access to the non-conscious, and some would say access to God's conscious. It's considered the feminine form of God. It's very powerful, very beautiful, but it creates a psychosomatic effect, which now makes a lot of sense if you followed everything we've talked about scientifically. Because what happens is you suddenly have insights and memories, and you go back and you see certain things, or you learn certain things about yourself that become clear again. And then the body has a physiological effect where it purges. And it purges through sweating, it can purge through crying, it can purge through your stomach, your GI. And one of the primary ways that it purges through vomiting.
Yeah.
Okay. So this makes sense, right? Because if you read like Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, it's just further evidence of this science that the mind is the body. And we retain memory in the body, in the nervous system. Trauma is trapped in the body, etc. So you have this in sight, and then suddenly you have a psychosomatic effect, and you have a physiological reaction, and you begin to purge. So here I am. I'm going through ceremony with Chris, and I have this moment where I discover that there's, I feel like the medicine is telling me one thing. I go and I say, hey, the medicine's telling me I don't need any more medicine. And he laughs. He goes, this is a trick of the ego. And he gives me another cup. He goes, drink. And we laugh. And I go back and I ask the question. I said, hey, show me what else my ego is lying to me about. And suddenly I start to see this entire experience of my life. And I realized that like the whole reason that I was still trying to handle my divorce the way I was so that I would get my wife's approval. And then I started to look at all the women that I've chased for approval in my life. And it went all the way back, and I get back to the OG. I see my mom since 1982 seeking her approval, right? And I start to have this incredible purging taking place. And I'm out on the front lawn, and they give you these buckets, and I always knew I had this like bottomless pit of my need for validation. And I remember God's very funny this way. I remember I'm just over this bucket, vomiting over and over again. And I remember laughing to myself and go, oh, I finally found the bucket that I can fill with my need for validation. So then I in that moment, I look to the heavens, mom's now passed, right? So I'm talking to her. I go, hey, mom, I need you to know that I'm done seeking your validation, and like 30 seconds later, I look back up and I go, and I would really appreciate it if you tell me you're proud of me for that. So I have this incredible experience. And then I go back in and I'm sharing this, regaling Chris with this tale. And he goes, he goes, well, Keith, this is good because you realize that you're going to forget, because that's what we do as human beings. We forget, and then we remember, and we forget what's important. We forget what really matters. We forget that it's all about love. We forget that none of this shit really matters. And then we remember, and we have these profound moments. You've written down some notes, things you're going to take. You meet all these amazing people, you remember, and then you forget. So in an effort to remember and realizing this whole thing, I decided to keep myself a clean, empty bucket. I brought it home, and I would write myself little love notes. And this became my way of filling my own bucket. Yeah. In fact, one of them, very funny, I was dating a girl briefly, and she came over, and she had asked me if I was seeing anyone else. I was like, no, I'm not. And then she came over and she saw my notebook open on the counter, and there was this note, and it was like, Keith, I'm so proud of you for the man that you've become. I love your courage. I appreciate and she goes, who wrote you this note? And I'm like, oh, I actually wrote me that note. She's like, fucking hell you did. And I had to prove it.
That's the girliest handwriting I've ever seen.
I had to prove it by matching the handwriting. She was like, all right. So anyway, I start filling up this little bucket, and then, and I get home one day from a particularly tough trip, and I'm going to the bucket to, kind of experience my own validation, right? To just comfort myself and whatever. And my cleaning people had come through and they'd emptied the bucket.
No!
Yes, of course. And that's such a gorgeous metaphor.
Yeah.
Because there is no having it full. There is no, and it's a daily practice. It's a daily practice. Yeah. And so for you and for your listeners and anybody who's been kind enough to stay with this thing all the way to the end, that's my wish for you and for them, is that we take a little longer to forget and we're a little bit quicker to remember.
So that brings me to my last question. When everything's done and you are a distant memory, what do you want the world to remember about you?
My ego would want them to remember the impact I had, remember me as a good man, all the impressive parts, having a good heart, doing good in the world. My ego wants all of those things. My heart. And I think if I listen to my soul, just hopes that they have a little more love for themselves and others because of whatever little bit I was able to share, even if none of it is attributed to me.
There's no doubt that's for real. You're already doing that, dude.
Nah, I hope this is true. But thank you.
Thank you for joining me. I absolutely love you, man.
I love you too.
Come on back.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. If you like this episode of Cleared for Takeoff, make sure you leave a comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, of course, share it with somebody that you think would love it. And of course, check out my company, Eide. We do events all over the country. And if you're looking for the best team in event production, check out eidecom.com.